Hi there. In this video we'll be covering what are the first steps in writing a book. These are the steps I've used to write or ghostwrite 30 books, and I know they can help you too. By the end of this video you'll learn how to unlock your purpose for writing your book, how to decide on a publishing path, and how to keep moving forward when you face challenges along the way. And stay tuned until the end of the video for an opportunity I really think you're going to enjoy. Let's dive in. The first step in writing your book is figuring out what your purpose is. What is your reason for wanting to write a book? It could be anything, but you need to be honest with yourself. It's so easy to start writing a book thinking, I have a great story in me, I'm really interested in doing this. And then you start writing it and you face these challenges and obstacles. Writing a book is really hard, and you need to be able to keep pushing forward and push through those obstacles. And the way you can do that is by figuring out what your motivation is, what your internal motivation is, what are your goals for writing the book. You know, maybe you want to become a thought leader. Maybe you want to establish your business career. Maybe you want to get better speaking engagements. Maybe you want to just accomplish this life goal of writing a book. Maybe you want to create a legacy for your family and document your family's story. Whatever the case may be, you need to figure out what your purpose is for writing the book, because if you don't do that, every time you face these challenges, you're not going to have the motivation to want to keep going, to continue, because you don't see what's in it for you. You don't see what the value is in pushing forward through those obstacles. When things get difficult and challenging, you're just going to want to give up and put it aside and say, this is too hard. I can't see a reason to want to keep going. If you have that purpose locked in, you're going to keep going, even through those obstacles. The next step I want you to think about is doing some digging. Figuring out what you really want to say with this book, doing research, figuring out what other books are in this space. The worst thing that you would want to do is write a book and then publish it and find out that someone else already published something very similar to this, that some other popular book is already out there, and now you've wasted months, if not years of your life writing a book that is redundant, that somebody else has already basically written. Or writing a book that feels rushed. You want to go into the writing process feeling empowered, and you want to do so by figuring out, how popular books in this space are, what are the outcomes that you want to accomplish from the book. If it's lead generation, for example, what sets your story, your business, your message apart? Why should somebody want to read your book? That's what you really need to figure out. Dig deep within yourself to figure out why someone would want to read your book with your message. What makes your book the perfect book for somebody. You really need to unlock that. Figure out what sets your book apart and makes it unique from every other book out there, and also do the research and figure out how you're going to be able to gather the stories for the book. Those are things you want to think about. If your book is based on your own experiences and you can just download your ideas from your brain and onto the page, that's a little bit easier. But if your book is based on a lot of research, if your book is based on lots and lots of digging, you want to know that going in. You kind of want to figure out what the gaps are so you can keep moving forward. You kind of know going in, what you're facing, what's the obstacle. Another step to consider is your publishing path. There's really two paths that I want to talk about in this video. One is traditional publishing and one is self-publishing. Traditional publishing is typically for more mainstream popular books, books with sales opportunities, books that are going to sell more copies, and books from authors with stronger platforms. If you're somebody who has a strong social media platform, you have a lot of followers, maybe you have email subscribers, you have things figured out on a certain level, and you have people who are going to buy from you. If you can send your message to lots of people and they're going to buy your book, those are the types of authors that traditional publishers are typically focused on working with. If you have a great message, you have a great story that's going to sell lots of copies, maybe you don't need as strong of a platform. But ultimately, all of these things are going to come into alignment for a traditional publisher. Traditional publishers are looking at working with authors who have a book that's going to sell copies. When you work with a traditional publisher, they'll typically give you an advance against future royalties. So it's nice to get a little money coming in from the book itself, even before it's published. So there's some really good and positive things about traditional publishing. It also, again, takes longer, so that's a negative. And there's less control over the final product that you have as the author. When you self-publish, on the other hand, it's up for you to follow all the steps to publication, whether that's editing, design work, uploading the book on different platforms. All those things are up to you, but there's a lot of control in your hands, which is really nice. There's a shorter window to publication, and it's up for you to sell copies of the book. Ultimately, on either side of it, whether you traditionally publish or self-publish, you as the author are the ultimate driver, but when you self-publish, you have more control over everything. Where you put the book, maybe you sell it on your website. Maybe you put it on other websites like Amazon as well. There's so many different things that you can do and levers that you can pull and things that you can do to promote your services and offerings. And it's really encouraging for me to see self-publishing taking off the way it is and more authors deciding to self-publish. Just because I think it's great to have that control, and it's great to knock down the barriers to publishing. If traditional publishers are a gatekeeper, with self-publishing, you don't have to worry about that. It's great to be able to, you decide that this is a great book and you get to publish it and not have to worry about somebody else saying yes to it or worrying about the commercial viability of your book. It's your book, you get to put it out into the world, and you don't have to worry about anybody else saying yes to it, which is amazing. But it's good to know which path you want to choose, because it really sets up what work you need to do to get ready to publish your book. If you traditionally publish, there's a lot of work that you need to do to get your proposal together. And you really need to start thinking about 1 to 2 years down the road. With self-publishing, you don't have to worry about those things as much, even though you should really do the research and do the digging and know the answers either way. But it's really great to be able to have both options and be able to choose which one works best for you. After you've done all of that work and made these choices, the next step is really book foundation work. Before you put a single word into your book, before you start writing, it's important to understand what you're writing, what the reader takeaway is, who your audience is, and how you're going to organize the book, because it's ultimately going to make the writing process that much easier. When I think about book foundation work, I think about 3 specific things: hook, audience, and outline. With the hook, when somebody reads your book, what is the takeaway and how are they going to carry it forward with them into their life? And you need to be able to narrow this hook down to 1 sentence, maybe 2 at most, but really 1 sentence. You need to simplify your book's message and be able to share that clearly, definitively, authoritatively. If you can't do that, if you can't summarize your book down to 1 sentence and explain what a reader benefit is from reading the book, you haven't figured out what your book is about and how it's going to help somebody. And that means it's going to be really tough for somebody to figure out what they're actually going to benefit from by reading your book. So it's going to make it that much harder for somebody to want to pick up your book and read it. You need to figure out what your book is about and how it's going to help somebody in a sentence. 1 sentence, narrow it down. The next element of book foundation work is audience. Who is your book for? And not everybody. There's no single book in the world that's for everybody. If your book is for everybody, it's for nobody. You really need to burrow down on who your audience is, where they live, what their reader level is, the kinds of things that they're interested in. And knowing who your audience is really going to help you in the book promotion side too, because you're going to know where your audience is located, how to find them, how to connect with them. If you really deeply know who your audience is, it's going to make it easier for you to find them. And the next element of book foundation work is outline. Outline, outline, outline. There's so many writers who just start writing and say, I'm going to just write and see how this thing goes and see where it turns up. I'm all about free writing. I'm all about exploring the space of your story. But have an outline in place when you start writing, because it's going to help you orient toward the direction, orient toward the path. You're going to focus on writing the things that are going into your book and not things that maybe will wind up in your book, maybe won't wind up in your book. If you don't outline, you're really not going to know what's inside and outside of the frame of the book. So you're going to probably write things that have nothing to do with your book itself. The outline is an accountability tool. It's an opportunity to really narrow down and focus in on the things that matter most and keep you in track, keep you in line when you're writing. So it's going to make everything else so much easier and it's going to make the writing process that much more efficient. There's one more thing I want you to focus on when you think about first steps in writing your book. Know yourself, know your limitations, know your patterns, know your habits. You need to know yourself in order to make progress with this book, in order to stick with it. Think about projects that have worked. Think about projects that have not worked in the past. Why did they succeed or fail? What were your working habits? When did you get your best work done? You're going to want to really understand those things and really explore them deeply. Explore what works and what doesn't work for you. The time of day that's going to be best for you to write. Block out distractions. You want focus time. I think a lot of times when people think about writing their book and making progress, they think about, oh, if I only had 2 or 3 hours, if I only had 4 hours, if I only had this afternoon free. What could you do if you focus during the time that you do have? If you have 30 minutes of deep focus time, you can get so much writing done. So it's not always about time, it's about focus. It's about making most of your focus time. You could do a writing sprint and write hundreds of words in the span of 10, 20, or 30 minutes if you just sit down and write and not worry about anything else, block out all the outside world and write. Another thing to think about is how you get your writing done. A lot of times when people think about writing a book, they think about sitting at a keyboard and typing away. But I found that the most efficient way to write a book is actually to speak it out, to speak into an audio recorder, to upload your audio at an automatic transcription website like Otter or Rev, and use those words to shape your story. Use those words to turn this raw text into chapters of your book. It's so powerful to see how much work you can get done, how much writing you can do in the span of an hour-long car ride or a walk. And it's peaceful, it's calm. You can, go look at the scenery and write your book. You don't have to be constrained by a desk, and it's just awesome. It's awesome to be able to do that. What your limitations are, what the strengths are, what helps you get things done. And then also, how can you make that easier? How can you take out the obstacles? If you can take out the obstacles in your path, if you can figure out the things that are getting in your way, and finding a way around them, whether it's scheduling your time differently, whether it's taking a different approach to writing, whether it's blocking out your schedule for an hour or two every Monday and doing writing on that time. If you can make steady, consistent progress, if you can build good habits, good things are going to happen with your book. You're going to be able to be empowered, you're going to feel motivated, you're going to feel purpose to keep going. And when you do face those obstacles, because you are going to face them, whether it's internal challenges, external challenges, there's always things that pop up during the writing process. There's things that surface that you really weren't thinking about. As those things do surface, you're going to have the desire to keep going, and you're going to have the desire to get rid of them, to block them out as much as you can, and keep moving forward. If you can do all those things, if you can figure out what you want to write about, if you can unlock your purpose, if you can figure out your publishing path, your book foundation, and unlocking your best writing path, you're going to be in such strong shape with this book, and you're going to write a book that's super powerful, and that's going to move somebody. And that's what's exciting about it. You have the ability within you to write a book that's going to impact somebody and change their life. It's the awesomest thing. It's just incredible to be able to do that. It's not only going to change your life, but it's going to change somebody else's. So get writing, keep writing, and stick with it, because there's good things on the opposite side of publishing your book. If you want to learn more about what are the first steps in writing a book, I have a writing course, an accountability course that I would love for you to check out. It's my Good Book Accountability course, and I created it for authors just like you, who may be struggling, who may be facing obstacles on the journey. It's just really powerful to be able to meet every week and talk about our books and talk about the challenges we're facing and getting past them together. If you want to learn more about the writing course, you can head to my website. It's goodbookmastery.com. You can click the link below and check out my Good Book Accountability course. Remember, a good book can change your life. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.